I'd like to share my screen to check whether there is a question from audiences. I think there is not yet any question from the audiences. So yes, I think you have raised two questions. As far as I remember, one question, I think the second question is about necessity of higher insulation for non-residential buildings. And the first one is...
that was the first one. My first question was the necessity of insulation for the non-residential buildings. That was my first question. And the second one is about existing buildings. How do you deal with the existing building? How, do you force them to renovate, or do you just give them incentives like subsidies or loan, or, how do you deal with that?
Yeah,
very curious.
Thank you very much. Very important two questions. So I need to ask any panelist to say something about those two questions. How about David Nemzo? David Nemzo is going to make a presentation about his working group on international survey on building energy costs. David, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me, Dr. Sawachi?
Yeah, very well, very well, very well. So do you have any comment to his questions?
Good evening to you, and good evening, Dr. Imamura. Thank you so much for your presentation. I just sent you a question and a comment, especially about this point you raised about existing buildings and how difficult it is you didn't say this, but perhaps for political or cultural reasons, it's very difficult to ask people to take their home or their office building or their restaurant and make an upgrade, right? But I wanted to ask, so in the United States, we were working on this, and we were making slow progress, and we were experimenting in different jurisdictions, including with mandates. I wanted to ask you if you thought in Japan, if there were particular incentives that you thought were more effective, either types of incentives like tax incentives or rebates, or technology areas like air conditioning or lighting. Do you any insights as to what can work better for existing buildings, at least in the Japanese setting?
Well, it might be a difficult question, because we are trying to all the possibilities from now on. We have to, including tax incentive, of course, and of course we have to enlarge our budget system, subsidies and everything, and also the low interested loan as well, but not by law. You cannot force them. You cannot mandate them to renovate by law. I think it is too difficult.
Well, may I say something else, Takao?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Well, first I want to say, Dr. Imamura, if you don't mind, I was doing something with my PowerPoint, and I wasn't looking up at your presentation, and you said in Japan we like to take long hot baths, and then you said, as you can see. And so I looked up because I thought you might have a photograph of Japanese people taking long hot baths, but unfortunately you only had a graph of this thing and not an actual picture. So anyhow, I just want to say that. But so in the United States, an approach we're trying, and it's starting at the local and state level, and we're looking at expanding it, and started right here where I live in Washington, D.C. and New York City, is to have a mandate for existing buildings, for commercial buildings, primarily, some residential. But it doesn't say you must put in different windows or more insulation. It says you must reach a certain percent savings by a certain date. But I want to say is it's in 7 cities maybe by now, Boston and Seattle and New York and St. Louis. But this requirement is in place legally, but the date of effectiveness hasn't started yet. And that's when I think that's an important I'm very glad that these cities were able to pass these measures, and sometimes in Boston it was unanimous, other places it was unanimous by the local government, but we don't know yet how people will finally react in the marketplace or respond politically. So, but this is our next approach. It's called building performance standards, and it is mandatory, and we'll see if it's successful or not.
That's interesting. Thank you.
But so much of this is cultural, right, and political. The other thing I want to say, Takao and Dr. Imamura, about existing buildings is, in addition to the envelope and the windows, there's always the equipment in the buildings, right? And if we have standards or incentives, right, for appliances or lighting or air conditioning, this is still progress on existing buildings.
Right.
May I answer to your comments, Takao? Can I?
About Japanese people in hot baths?
About appliances, because envelope for envelope, it is not easy to change the specification. Right. Very difficult. But as for the appliances, naturally they will be changed every 15 years, something like that. So gradually the performance, energy efficiency of the appliances will be improved naturally compared with building envelopes. But right. In Japan, there is another system to regulate the energy efficiency of appliances. There is a very famous policy called Top Runner method, run by Ministry of Energy, Trade and Industry. And they are regulating the average energy efficiency of equipment, say every 5 years. Every 5 years, the manufacturer group should have to make a target for after 5 years. So, and they should reach to the target in 5 years, something like that. So that kind of another policy can be contributing to the improvement of the building total energy efficiency from the appliance aspects. And I think there are, as you can see on the screen, I'm sharing the screen, Google document, and you are seeing too many questions from the audience suddenly. So I think we will have only 3 minutes from now. So very difficult to cover all questions, but not so easy. But I'd like to choose the first one. This is a question to Mr. Imamura. This question is: does Japan address other aspects except thermal insulation in the standard, such as shading, ventilation, and equipment performance? Could you please answer, Mr. Imamura?
Dr. Sawachi-san, you can answer this question, but the answer is yes, of course. We consider shading, of course, in Okinawa, especially, and also ventilation as well, the equipment, as Dr. Sawachi told you.
Yes, and ventilation performance and air conditioner and heating appliances, they are being evaluated when we calculate primary energy consumption. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Imamura. We have only 1 minute to finish this session. Do you have any remarks to conclude this session, Mr. Imamura?
Not particularly, but I really thank you for giving me such a great opportunity to talk about the Japanese system. I would like to learn about your system in other countries as well in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your nice remark to conclude. Thank you very much, Mr. Imamura.